The Galactic Academy's Xenobotany lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor Zethkar adjusted his protective containment field for the third time. The Valkyrian's forearms trembled slightly as he prepared to unveil what he considered the most terrifying specimen in his collection of deadly flora from across the galaxy. "Students," Professor Zethkar's voice resonated through his translator. "Today we examine the most insidious plant weapon ever discovered. From the death world humans call Earth, I present to you." He paused dramatically, his breathing apparatus hissing. "Capsicum annuum." The assembled students, a mixture of Killian crystalline beings, gaseous nethers, and various other species, leaned back in their seats as the containment field shimmered away. Inside lay what appeared to be an innocuous plant, bearing small, colorful pods. James Morrison, the only human in the advanced xenobotany program, looked up from his lunch container with mild interest. He had been quietly eating his salad, trying not to draw attention to himself as usual. Being the sole representative of a species most of the galaxy considered barely civilized was challenging enough without disrupting lectures. "This specimen," Professor Zethkar continued, pulling up holographic displays of molecular structures, "produces a chemical weapon so potent that it can cause immediate tissue damage, respiratory failure, and excruciating pain. The compound, capsaicin, is classified as a Class 7 chemical deterrent." Lisa Chen, a Killian student whose crystalline form refracted the lecture hall lights into rainbow patterns, raised one of her geometric appendages. "Professor, how do such dangerous organisms survive on Earth without destroying their entire ecosystem?" "An excellent question, Miss Chen," the professor replied, his protective suit's cooling system humming louder. "We theorize that Earth's environment is so hostile that even the plants must weaponize themselves for survival. This particular specimen can produce capsaicin concentrations reaching over 2 million Scoville units, enough to incapacitate most known sentient species." James nearly choked on his salad. He glanced down at the cherry tomatoes and bell peppers in his lunch container, then back at the professor's deadly specimen. The bell pepper in his mouth suddenly tasted sweeter by comparison. "The indigenous humans," Professor Zethkar continued, "have somehow developed a tolerance to these chemical weapons through generations of exposure. It's believed they consume these toxins as a form of slow immunization against their planet's hostile environment." A Nether student's gaseous form pulsed with curiosity. "Has anyone attempted to weaponize these plants for military applications?" "The Geneva Solar Convention strictly prohibit the use of Earth flora in warfare," the professor replied solemnly. "The psychological impact alone of knowing your enemy could deploy such biochemical agents is considered too cruel for civilized conflict." James slowly raised his hand, and the professor acknowledged him with what might have been nervousness. "Professor," James said carefully, "I think there might be some confusion about the danger level of that particular plant." The lecture hall fell silent. Professor Zethkar's breathing apparatus made several rapid clicks, a sign of stress among Valkyrians. "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate human bravado, but please don't underestimate the lethality of your world's flora. This single specimen could theoretically clear this entire lecture hall." James stood up, his lunch container in hand. "Professor, with respect, that's a bell pepper. We eat them raw in salads." He held up his container, showing the sliced peppers mixed with his greens. The gasps from the assembled students created a small atmospheric disturbance that set off 3 different species environmental sensors. "You're consuming them?" Lisa's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. "Voluntarily?" "Well, yeah," James said, spearing another piece with his fork. "They're mild. Sweet, actually. We give them to children." Professor Zethkar's 4 arms began gesticulating wildly. "Impossible. The chemical analysis shows—" "Did you test a bell pepper or did you test a Carolina Reaper?" James interrupted gently. "Because there's a pretty significant difference in the capsaicin content." The professor consulted his data pad, his breathing becoming more labored. The sample was obtained from a human agricultural station in the Sol system. It was labeled as hot pepper, handle with extreme caution. James winced, Professor, humans have a bit of a sense of humor about our food. We've bred peppers that range from completely mild, he held up a piece of bell pepper, to ones that actually can hospitalize people. It's kind of a recreational challenge for some of us. Recreational? The Nether student's form turned a disturbing shade of purple. You consume chemical weapons for entertainment? Some do. There are competitions. James took another bite of his salad. Though most of us just use the mild ones for flavor and nutrition, bell peppers are actually really good for you. Lots of vitamin C. Professor Zethkar slumped against his lectern, all four arms hanging limply. You mean to tell me that I've spent 3 years studying what you consider a dietary supplement? I mean, you're not wrong about some varieties being dangerous, James offered diplomatically. But the one you have there? That's basically candy compared to what some humans eat on their pizza. Lisa's crystalline form dimmed thoughtfully. This explains so much about human psychological resilience. If you voluntarily consume chemical deterrents for pleasure, no wonder your species adapted so quickly to space travel. Actually, James said, warming to the subject, we also eat a fungus that's toxic to most species, mushrooms, and ferment plant matter until it produces ethanol, which we then drink despite it being literally poisonous. The lecture hall erupted in a mixture of horror and fascination. Professor Zethkar made several notes on his datapad, muttering about updating his entire curriculum on Earth flora. Mr. Morrison, the professor finally said, would you be willing to assist in developing a more accurate classification system for Earth plants? James grinned, holding up his lunch. Sure, Professor, but maybe next time start with something actually dangerous, like a manchineel tree or castor beans. Those will definitely get your students' attention. As the lecture dissolved into an impromptu discussion on human dietary habits, Lisa floated over to James's desk. You know, she said, her crystalline voice tinkling with amusement, I'm beginning to understand why the rest of the galaxy finds humans so intimidating. Because we eat peppers? James asked, offering her his lunch container. No, Lisa replied, politely declining the offer. Because you eat what we consider chemical weapons and call it a light snack. It makes us wonder what you actually consider dangerous. James thought about this for a moment, then smiled. Well, when you put it that way, I guess we are pretty weird. From his position at the lectern, Professor Zethkar called out, Mr. Morrison, for tomorrow's class, could you perhaps bring some examples of what humans consider actually spicy food? James's grin widened. Sure thing, Professor. I'll bring some ghost pepper salsa my mom made. The collective shudder that ran through the lecture hall was visible even to the naked human eye.